To understand judgment, you have to start with the character of the judge. The Bible's claim about God is not that he is generally good, or mostly fair, or better than the available alternatives. The claim is categorical. God is holy. The Hebrew word is kadosh, and it means, at its root, set apart. Not 1 degree better than us on a moral scale, but categorically different in kind. Isaiah 6, the vision of the throne room, shows the seraphim, the angelic beings surrounding God, crying out, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty." In Hebrew, repeating a word once is emphasis. Repeating it twice is superlative. But repeating it 3 times, a device called a trisayon, is the highest possible intensification in the Hebrew language. There is no fourth. There is no greater dot, comma. Now here is the logical consequence that most people skip over. A being of perfect holiness cannot simply ignore moral evil. Not because he lacks mercy will come to mercy, but because ignoring evil would make him something other than perfectly good. Think of it this way. We do not admire a judge who lets criminals walk free because he personally likes them. We call that corruption. We understand intuitively that justice, real justice, requires that wrong things be acknowledged as wrong and treated accordingly. The philosopher Anselm of Canterbury, writing in the 11th century, put it this way: sin is an infinite offense against an infinite God, and therefore requires an infinite response. You cannot simply hand-wave it away and call that goodness. The demand for judgment is not God being cruel. It is God being consistent with his own nature, and this creates what theologians call the central problem of the human condition. When most people think about judgment for sin, they think about a list of bad things they did, a kind of cosmic rap sheet, and that category is real. The Bible calls these sins of commission. Things we actively did that violated the moral law, but biblical judgment is considerably broader than that list. Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, expanded the frame significantly. You have heard it said, "Do not murder," but I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. And again, you have heard it said, "Do not commit adultery," but I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. The judgment, in other words, is not only of behavior, it is of the interior, the desires, the motivations, the posture of the will toward God and toward other people. James 4 verse 17 adds another dimension. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. Sins of omission. The good we could have done and didn't. The neighbor we walked past. The resource we held when it was needed. The truth we stayed silent about when it would have cost us something to speak. And beneath both of these categories, beneath the acts and the failures to act, Paul in Romans 3 identifies something more fundamental. Not just what we do, but what we are. There is no one righteous. Not even one. There is no one who understands. There is no one who seeks God. All have turned away. The problem is not a list of bad choices that a good person regrettably made. The problem is orientation. The human will, by default, is turned away from God, not because God made us that way, but because of what theologians call the fall, the decision made at the beginning of human history to make the self the center rather than God. Everything else follows from that original reorientation. The Bible does not describe judgment as a single, simple event. It describes a structured architecture, and getting the categories right matters for understanding what we're actually talking about. First, present judgment. Romans 1 describes God giving people over to the consequences of their choices a form of judgment that is already operative in human experience. The fracturing of relationships, the diminishing of conscience, the deepening bondage of repeated sin, these are not morally neutral. They are the present tense expression of what it means to live in opposition to the grain of reality. Third, the great white throne. Revelation 20 verse 11 to 15. The final judgment, at the end of all things, at which the dead are raised and the books are opened. This is the judgment of ultimate final account. What all three share is this: they are not random, they are not arbitrary, they are consistent with both the nature of the judge, perfectly holy, perfectly knowing, and the nature of what has been done. This is justice in its purest form, and the soul that has spent its life constructing arguments against it will find in that moment that the arguments don't hold. Here is a theological problem that Christianity claims to solve, and that no other major worldview resolves in the same way. If God is perfectly just, he cannot simply ignore sin. To do so would make him unjust, which contradicts his nature. If God is perfectly loving, he wants to redeem rather than only condemn. How can both be fully true? How can justice be fully satisfied and mercy be genuinely extended, not by compromising one for the other, but at the same time, fully? This is the question Anselm asked in Cur Deus Homo. Why did God become man? And it is the question the cross is the answer to. Paul lays it out in Romans 3 verse 25 to 26 with surgical precision. God presented Christ as a sacrifice of atonement through the shedding of his blood, to be received by faith. He did this to demonstrate his righteousness, because in his forbearance he had left the sins committed beforehand unpunished. He did it to demonstrate his righteousness at the present time, so as to be just and the one who justifies those who have faith in Jesus. Both simultaneously, just because the sin is not overlooked. The debt is paid. The account is settled. Justice is satisfied. The one who justifies, because the payment is made by someone else on behalf of those who couldn't pay. This is why Christians call the gospel good news. It is not. God decided not to care about sin. That would be false comfort and a worse God. It is. God cared about sin enough to pay for it himself in the person of Jesus, so that the demands of justice could be met and the door of mercy could be genuinely open. Theology always has a telos, an endpoint that it's aimed at. And the endpoint of understanding judgment is not fear for its own sake. It is response. The Bible uses three interrelated words for the human response to this theological reality. Repentance, metanoia in Greek, literally a change of mind and direction. Not merely remorse about consequences, but a reorientation of will away from self and toward God. Faith, not intellectual assent to propositions, but trust. The act of receiving what has been offered. The hand reaching out for what it cannot earn. Obedience, not as a mechanism of earning, but as the natural expression of a changed orientation. The fruit of the tree, not the root. And there is urgency here, not because God is impatient, but because human life is not indefinitely long. Hebrews 9 verse 27, perhaps the most straightforward verse in the Bible on this subject. Just as people are destined to die once, and after that to face judgment. Once, and after that judgment, the theology we've mapped today is not abstract. It is a framework for understanding the stakes of every human life, including yours, and for recognizing both the gravity of what we face and the reality of what has been provided. The God of the Bible is just. That should make us take sin seriously. The God of the Bible is merciful. That should make us take grace seriously. And the cross is where both of those things become simultaneously, fully permanently true. If any node on that map raised a question for you, a concept you want to go deeper on, a theological term that needs unpacking, drop it in the comments. This channel exists for exactly that kind of conversation. Next time, we are going to map the biblical theology of grace, specifically what it means that salvation is by grace through faith and not by works, what grace actually is, what it costs, and what it demands of the one who receives it. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Until then, think carefully. The questions are worth it.